here is just some photos of working in this area to just remind you of how you can position or use your forearm or whatever. That's what these are. So I'm just gonna highlight them a little bit and then move on. I got a couple of more slides about application, but if you want me to stop, on any of them, just pipe up and we'll do that. So this is pretty self-explanatory. Using the forearm when the person is prone around the scapular area. And this is a variation on that by using the hand here, my other arm, to kind of lift the shoulder up so that you can use, people complain about between the shoulder blades. Technically that's not our shoulder, but it's important to be able to, a lot of times when people say their shoulder hurts, they're really talking about the stuff between the shoulder blades, which would be rhomboids, anterior serratus, that sort of thing. You can also put a rolled towel or bolster or something under there so that you can change that position.
So you're just leaning in? Is that when you're just leaning?
I'm just leaning. That's what I do 99% of the time. This is an example of using a closed or a loose fist into the area. You want to make sure that you don't get your elbows hyperextended or bent. And these are all prone, which is not ideal. But people, sometimes you gotta do something as you work in. So I do these, I work with this. I primarily work on the arm when the person is sidelined. Luke primarily works on the arm when people are prone and supine. So there's a lot of different ways of approaching things. Notice how relaxed my wrist is when you're doing this, and also where the pressure I am using, where I'm applying the focus is not down here by the wrist. I'm in contact with the person from mid-arm to the elbow, but not the olecranon, not up in there. I'm right in this area, right here. If you lean here, you're going to distribute straight up into the joint and that sort of thing. But when people lean here, they try to apply the pressure here, then they drop off it and they're unstable. And I see that all the time. They apply the pressure up through here. So this is positioning while the person is prone. I am not a fan of keeping people on their stomach for very long. So, but this isn't wrong either. The point I want to make with this is that this tissue is higher, even if you've got your table at the proper height there, it's higher up. So it is conducive to using the forearm. But the arm is narrower, so I may want to make the switch. This is easy for the forearm, but now I'm bent too far over for the forearm. So I may want to make the switch to use the palm of my hand. Careful to not put tons of pressure right here. You've got nerves that run through there. So you're here, or you're using a loose fist in the area. But it has to do with the difference in the height that supports forearm use here, and then here, because it's just narrower on the table, that would be an indication where I might switch to my hand. And then that's an example of loose fist into the hand, again in the prone position. Now, this is something that people, you may not do in the prone position. And I've got my forearm in this picture. See how I've got my forearm up here? And that, I caution you against that. I'm sure I did that for the photo shoot so that my hand was not distracting up here on the person's torso. But that use of the forearm in this position, my arm should be translated over, or the forearm should be moved out a little bit more.
Or you just switch which forearm.
Yep. So an example, we're still in the prone position here, an example of stabilizing here, the scapula, so that the movement I am creating is targeting the glenohumeral joint specifically. Because if I don't stabilize the scapula, then the scapula is going to move in conjunction with the glenohumeral joint. This is joint movement, still in the prone position. And then over here to sideline, which is, again, my preferred. So again, I'm stabilizing the head here, and if I were to use my forearm right here, then my chest is going to be right in his face. So sometimes initially when I'm working at the head of the table, I will use a forearm in this area, or I'll use my hand in this area. My pressure is here. So that would be where that levator scapula is coming in, that combined attachment, and you got upper trapezius in the same area, and sternocleidomastoid in the same area. You got a lot of stuff that comes up into the same area. My fingers and thumb are just along for the ride. So here is where the pressure is concentrated. Whoops, went the wrong way. So these extrinsic muscles, you've got your latissimus is a biggie that attaches all along the back and comes in to the arm and is a major internal rotator with it. But it's also a major stabilizer. It does this, so pulls down. But that whole axle armpit area in through there, you've got some rotator cuff stuff that comes through. You've got the pectoralis that's in through there. Anterior serratus is in through there, and so this is how I can get to all of that in the sideline position with that. And then this is coming at it from an anterior view here and bringing, because what happens in the shoulder area, it's the pecs and stuff that we internally rotate and then we start to come forward. And we drive like that, computers are like that, we do dishes like that, so this shortens over time. It's a real common thing. That's going to change the interaction between the muscles in the front and the back. It's going to change the position of the scapula. That's going to interfere with how you can move your arm around and how the clavicle is going to rock and all of that. So this is an example of how when we're working with a limb, we have to pay attention to the torso attachments. Now the pectoralis is primarily about all the different things that the arm itself can do. So we can't, somebody comes in and says my shoulder hurts, I can't not work here. Just like I can't not work in the back, and if it's a latissimus dorsalis part of it, then I gotta work down the whole back, and then I gotta realize that it's, we've got these diagonal patterns that go through that, and the latissimus goes right into the lumbar dorsal fascia that goes into the glute that's part of the IT band that's gonna end up with plantar fasciitis. You know, that's where I get frustrated, is trying to narrow things down and isolate too much. Just by tipping them back just a little bit, I can get into the anterior serratus and then into some of the attachments, teres major, teres minor, some of that stuff in there. So I'm not a fan of people, and this is always what people will show that makes it look real magnificent, right? So they bring the arm around the back when they're laying prone, and then they push on it. So that puts a tremendous amount of strain on the anterior capsule right here. So if anybody has anything going on with that, or they've had a dislocation or anything like that, you're setting them right up for that again. You know, that's not good. And they do that so that they think that they can get underneath the scapula, is why they do that. And then there's they're after the knot. Where'd Logan go? I'm always looking. Oh, there he is. Anybody that's been in class with me, I'm always looking for Logan. If there's something under the scapula, there's two things that are going on. One, it's referred pain from the brachial plexus. So it's not there anyway. Or there's a pseudo joint membrane between the scapula, the muscles, subscapularis, that sort of thing, and where it rides on the rib cage over top of the anterior serratus rhomboid, which are really, they're one structure that just goes around. And it gets sticky in there. So, you know, it's more about lifting it, moving it around, and that sort of thing. So why anybody would want to dig underneath the scapula from the prone or sideline position befuddles me. But that's where people think the spot is, you know, and so with this, I've got this cradled. I'm using this part of my hand. My thumb is just along for the ride in there. And I have it right on the edge of the scapula. And then I'm pulling the shoulder over on top of it. We're going to demonstrate these things.
Small interjection.
And then I can just roll it around.
Yeah. Small, just because of, you know, she and I have some differences and stuff, but this lower one too
Yes.
can offer, part of this can be that you have a client come in, they had somebody do that before and they liked it, this one, right? And maybe you're just trying to satisfy that sense of perception. Either one of these is capable of doing it. This lower one, as you can see, when the person's laying on the shoulder, that tends to wing it out for you. And I have used soft fist and or fingers to be able to just go along that line. You can't incorporate as much joint movement as you can here, but it's way less effort on you maybe having to coordinate multiple things at once. But you can create that sense of going along that edge and getting a perception of separation for them without putting the glenohumeral joint in a position where it could dislocate. So there you go.
Ta-da! And it's even more of an issue in older people. You really don't want to be bringing that around like that when somebody is older. So this is just another example of grabbing it, lifting it just a little bit, and then moving. So this is my preferred way to do the arm. And I just lay it on the side of the body, and then I can use my forearm without, me having to bend over. A lot of the ergonomics, people are bending way too far over with what they're doing. You want to pretty much stand up. You want to be standing pretty straight.
Excuse me.
And then just leaning forward, by rocking forward onto your feet. So I can get the whole lateral side of the arm, just like with the leg. I can get the lateral side, and then if I go over to the other side, I get the medial side. And then when they roll over, it's just reversed. So there's that example right there. So this is compression, and then I'm moving this back and forth. I would do that rather than a manual friction back and forth. But this is also sliding that biceps on the brachialis. And that does need to slide in there. If those two have gotten stuck together a little bit, then you're going to get some strain at the elbow and or at the shoulder, depending on where the bind is at. I think a lot of people miss this. Now we're into the supine position. Again, pressure plus movement. Every time I move this, it's an assessment process. So I'm assessing the movement as well as the tissue compliance under my hand right through here. If I just slow it down, make it a little bit more deliberate, now I'm into an intervention, inhibitory pressure plus movement. This is, I'm probably kneeling when I took these pictures from the sports massage book, and I could get up and down then. But
seated would work just fine too.
you can do a stool or a chair. So again, the idea of inhibitory pressure plus movement, loose fist. Now, if I have had them sideline, then I'm not going to spend a lot of time working with the arms supine and prone. But if I don't, or if it's more of a specific focus for them, then, I would access it in all positions, because you come at it from a different angle. So you're getting different forces, different direction and vectors of forces in there when you do that. This is a position that most can get into. You usually have to put it up on a pillow. It's a real nice position for the hand and the forearm. But not everybody can get their hand up over their head like that. The main pathology that I have found in the upper limb that drives people to distraction is nerve impingement. There's a lot of nerves that run out of the neck, brachial plexus, cervical area. They come down, wrap around, and then they come in through here, and they're in the armpit, and they come down through here. So because they're concentrated, you got similar nerve structure in the lower limb, but there's more room for things to move from one place to another. In the arm, everything gets constricted. It's got to go underneath the clavicle. We've got the issue with two jointed muscles that, that type of movement has a tendency to make the one compartment stick to the other a little bit. The ulnar nerve comes real close to the surface here in the back. That's why I see people do massage like this and I just cringe. Or even like that, you know, that's right where your ulnar nerve, it's your funny bone nerve. You don't have as much muscle mass in through here, but this is a vulnerable area. This is the carpal tunnel. You get in through there. So the potential for nerve impingement is maximized in the upper limb. All an impingement is that a nerve is being pressed on and it doesn't like it. If that nerve is being pressed firm enough and long enough, you might get some more persistent nerve damage. Nerves don't like to be pressed. I will use the analogy that nerves are like worms. They like it slippery and they like room. And so we have to be aware of all the different places along the track, and you're experiencing a little of that right now. All the different areas along the track that can crowd or actually compress on a nerve structure. Technically, there's entrapment and impingement. They are different. Entrapment is soft tissue, so maybe there's a scar impinging it, or maybe there's muscle tension or something like that. And then the other is where there's bony. So a lot of times when somebody, especially if you go to a chiropractor or something, they will say, okay, you've got a pinched nerve. And that could be a bony impingement. That's less common. But in that instance, chiropractic can help. So some places then where the compression on the nerve can come from bony structure is where it comes out of the little holes in the vertebrae out through here, underneath the clavicle against the rib. That's a real common place for people to get. So first, and the ribs, for chiropractors, the ribs are just a nightmare. The first and second rib is a nightmare to get into. So, and then the other place where you can get more, it's a combination of bony and soft tissue, is here at the carpal tunnel. And then also back in here, that's real bony in through there. There's just a small little groove that it has to go in through that. But more likely, people are gonna get compression and nerve irritation from, and I'm notorious for this. I'm working on the computer and I go like this, and then I go, you know. So you want to be careful of that. So what we're trying to do with all of these is you start to get some friction in there, you're going to get some inflammation and you're going to get some fluid buildup. And if this is left to perpetuate, you can get some connective tissue changes around it, and it can get quite chronic. So we would have to use a multi-approach where we would use, you know, let's bring the tone down, inhibitory pressure plus movement, let's get the layers to slide, let's maybe refer to chiropractic, let's, you know, give some appropriate stretching through the full range. One of the things I have fought with the most working with the athletic population is a lot of time this starts with over reps, too heavy reps, bad form, you know, competition, I can lift more than you can lift. And then they get a little bit of inflammation going on, and then it starts to cascade and get into issues with it. When you try to educate them to remove the aggravating factor, They don't wanna give up the weightlifting. Not that Ben would ever do anything like that.
My favorite one is, I used to be able to do it in high school.
Yeah. Now Ben has had his share of shoulder issues. So once I get past this last one, this last couple of slides, I might have you give a little history.
Okay.
So, and then it's these relationship issues. If I change the orientation of my leg or my knee for whatever reason, that girdle is gonna move because everything is attached to everything. So I'm gonna twist, which means I have to twist so that my head, my eyes are facing forward. So any of these areas can be where the original problem started, but compensation could have traveled from the lower body up into the upper body. And so we can't forget this in terms of the full body approach. And it's pretty much on diagonals, you know, the right hip goes with the left shoulder, the right knee goes with the right elbow, that kind of a thing. And so just keep that in mind with the full body approach with stuff. And this happens posterior too. This just happens to be an anterior picture. And then these dots, the whole connective tissue wetsuit, the skin and superficial fascia, the main compartment, the deep fascia that wraps, you know, functional muscle units, makes the grooves so the nerve can run through it. The smaller parts of all of that come together, everything is all connected together, but it has to hang on the structure. And so otherwise it would slip off. All right, that's what happens when you wrinkle, is that your connections here in the face, you know, or your butt drags, or your, you know, all that. So we have to have some structural integrity. And while each segment should slip and move, it shouldn't slip off. So these are areas, common areas, where the connective tissues come together and anchor. That's where they hold on. So just like I got a waistband here that's holding my pants up and that sort of thing. So when we're looking at where we would, if we wanted to focus on the connection points, we would apply inhibitory pressure plus movement on the dot. Or if we were thinking about decompression or suction, then we would want to put it on the dot. But if we're thinking about the muscle structure, the contractile structures that run through all of this, then we want to be between the dots. Between the dots. So, so that's fun. So, you know, this thing, this triangle here, can you see now where you're probably, if somebody's got a shoulder issue, you're going to have to start all the way down here? Same in the front. The Lena alba runs all the way up, attaches on the xiphoid process, comes on up, and is you know, into the anterior neck. So that's why I go back to the full body massage, got an idea where you're going, and weave in, you know, normalization as you go.